Hi, welcome back to the painting studio. I'm Nic Hankins and I'm a certified Bob Ross instructor, and it's my pleasure to demonstrate for you today some fun with the Bob Ross wet on wet painting technique. I thought today we'd have some fun with black gesso and a little bit of liquid clear, and we'll see some of the effects that we can create with that. So come on up to the canvas and let me show you what I've got started. I have an 18 by 24 inch pre-stretched double prime canvas, and on top of that I've taken, let me show you this. I'll just grab a little paper towel here. You can create this effect with a crumpled up paper towel, or even a natural sea sponge works really well. But all I did was crumple up a paper towel, daub it in some black gesso, which is a water-based paint, and it dries very quickly. So I just popped around and made some little shapes up here. They're kind of random. I think I even have a little bit of our gray gesso in the background. I might have done that first and then a little bit of black gesso on top. No, all of that was allowed to dry completely. Like I said, if you give it 15-20 minutes, it'll be dry and you'll be ready to go, but that must dry completely. So once that's dry, on top of that, I've applied a very thin, even coat of liquid clear all over the entire canvas. So with that, we're ready to have a little fun, so let's do it. Let me start today with a 2-inch brush, and this is the same 2-inch brush I was using to scrub my liquid clear onto the canvas, and I'm just going to go right into some Indian yellow. Indian yellow is a transparent yellow. And all that means is we can see through it. We can see through it. You'll see what I'm talking about when I come up here. So if I apply some of this color to the canvas, all of that black gesso work I did beforehand will still kind of glow through there and be pretty. And I'm using just a small amount at a time. I'll pick up a little bit of paint, tap it into the bristles, and then I'll come up and spread it out and see what I've got. Now this is going to be a little bit of a fantastical painting. I'm just going to let the edges kind of soften and bleed, and we'll just have fun. We're not going to worry about reality too much today. We're just going to have a good time. See what kind of pretty effects we can create with the paint, the equipment. Just do something that makes you feel good. That's what painting's all about. It should make you feel good. Maybe a little over here. I've got something in mind here. I left a little open space. I've got something in mind with maybe a little waterfall. Just kind of finds its way down and through there. And I'm just kind of popping color all over the place here. Let me change colors. Let me pick up a little bit of Alizarin Crimson. That's another beautiful transparent color. It's kind of a jewel tone color. You can see right through it. We'll put a little pinkish glow maybe right back here. And of course, as that combines with the Indian yellow, you'll get a really brilliant, bright orangey glow, which is also very pretty. Just something real soft. Put this color wherever it makes you feel happy. There's no solid plan. There's no specific way I'm planning on doing this, and there shouldn't be for you either. Just hit the canvas and have some fun. See what happens. Sometimes your best stuff happens when it's not extremely planned out. Same dirty brush. I haven't washed it, not yet. I'm just going to go right into some phthalo blue. In fact, I'll kind of caution you. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'll kind of caution you about cleaning your brush and working on top of liquid clear. Liquid clear and paint thinner have a very violent, volatile reaction, and we're actually going to try to use that to our advantage a little later. We'll have some fun with that. But for the time being, I don't want any paint thinner to touch this liquid clear if I can help it. So I'm going to be very cautious about washing my brush, and when I do, I'm going to be certain that I dry it thoroughly. If you don't dry the brush thoroughly, bad things can happen if you don't mean for them to happen. If you intend for it, then it's pretty cool, but if you don't mean for it to happen, it can kind of take you by surprise and be a little strange. All right, maybe a little over here, down in this area. I don't know. Just kind of playing around. Already looks kind of pretty. We could almost leave it like that and have an interesting painting, but we'll keep going and see what happens. Let's wash a brush. We'll get rid of that color now. Just wash my brush out in some odorless paint thinner. Shake out all that excess. There, and we'll beat the devil out of it. Ready to go again. Ready to go again. All right, let's play around with the background just a bit. I'm going to pick up my clean, dry brush and tap the top corner into a very small amount of titanium white. I want to create a little bit. This is where we can really start having fun with all this stuff. So we've got a lot of underpainting, and we have a lot of transparent color up there. Now, if we add a little opaque color, just kind of pounce it in there, maybe wipe the brush off, and we soften it. The titanium white is opaque, but if you apply it carefully and thinly, you can create sort of a foggy, misty effect. It's really, really neat. It just sort of obscures some of that stuff that you've done in the background. Maybe just a little more up here. It almost feels like one of those very humid mornings in the summer when there's a little bit of coolness in the air in the morning, and you get to see some of that fog hanging in the air, and it's almost like it just sort of wafts through the branches of the trees. And beautiful things happen. A little sunlight sort of plays through there. Just create all sorts of interesting things. There we go. All right, let me grab a knife. We'll mix up a little color. Let's come down to the palette. Let's take a little titanium white, pick up some of that Alizarin Crimson, and a little phthalo blue, mix it all together. Just looking for a lavender color. I think I want a little more crimson in there. Yeah, that's getting closer. That's getting closer. That should work. Let's try that. Grab a fan brush, and I'll load both sides of that fan brush. Very, very full, but very smooth. I'm not going to allow the paint to kind of chunk up at the end. I want to wipe it through there, almost the way you'd sharpen a knife against a stone. You just sort of wipe one side, wipe this side. You'd never go straight down and grind it into the stone. You'd want to wipe them at a very flat angle. Consequently, that will sharpen your fan brush to a nice chiseled edge, and that's what we're looking for. All right, let's go up here and find maybe there are some very, very distant little trees, little spruce trees, evergreen trees that just hang out back here. Very quiet little things. Just barely show up. We might even need to go a little darker. Let me pick up just a little more blue and crimson. And make adjustments like that when you paint. If you're doing something and it's not quite working out, change it. Don't keep going. I have a lot of folks in class, they'll be painting a tree or whatever it is they're working on, a sky, mountain, it can be anything, and they'll say, geez, I just don't like that color. I kind of hate that color, but they just keep putting it on the canvas. So I always say, stop putting it on there. Change it. You have the power to make those decisions and change them around and make them work the way you want. I just want some distant little things that just barely live. They just barely peek through some of this atmospheric fog, and all this wild stuff back here. Maybe one leans out across there. Just using the corner of the brush, tapping back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Maybe we see another. Maybe we see another right here. Like I say, these are just, they're just barely there. I don't want them to be too loud or too well defined, because we're going to play with some layers back here. We're going to let's go back to that 2-inch brush and pick up a little more white, and down at the base of these trees, I'm just going to introduce a little more white, just kind of tapping it in there with the top corner. We'll have a little fog and a little mist and just all sorts of stuff hanging around down here. And you can make this as soft as you want. You can tap and tap and tap and tap and just turn it into a very, very soft, misty thing, or you can leave it sort of bold. It's up to you. I'm going to put a little on there and just kind of graze across, soften it down a little bit. Might even add a little more up here while I've got it on the brush. Kind of push some of this further into the background. Really make it soft. So we just kind of lose the bottom of those trees. We don't know exactly where they're sitting or where they're standing, and we don't really care either. At least not yet. Maybe later we will, but not quite yet. All right, let's come back to that original color. I'm going to go a little darker. We'll take our leftover there, and I'm going to add some mountain mixture, some of Bob's mountain mixture, and a little sap green. We'll go just a little darker, maybe even a little touch of Van Dyke brown just to dull it down. So I've got mountain mix, a little sap green, a little Van Dyke brown. That should work. That should work. Let's just keep going with that same fan brush. It's working pretty well. Just add some of this darker color right into the same brush. Sharpen it to a chiseled edge. Let's go back up here and create some closer trees now that live just in front of those. These live just in front of those. Start with just the corner. Then work your way down. As you work your way down, you can mash a little harder, bend that corner more. Maybe there's another one right there. Just barely peeking out of the fog. It's a long way away. Maybe we see a little one pop up in front of those. Just quiet little things in the faraway distance. There we go. We'll have some closer trees later maybe, but that's enough to get started. All right. Let's go back to that 2-inch brush. We'll take advantage of that. Maybe we've got just a little more. I want to kind of lose the bottom edge of these evergreens, these little spruce trees back here. I'm just going to soften them in. You can add a little more white if you want. Just go a little at a time though. We don't want this to get too bright. Just want to keep this kind of foggy, froggy. Real gently we'll brush across that. Just want it sort of mysterious back there. Now, let's wash another brush. I need to get rid of that. White paint. I want to go very dark now. It's time to get dark and opaque and put some big shadows in there. Get some closer stuff going, closer foliage. All right. And again, I'm going to take the time to dry that brush as thoroughly as I can. I don't want to mess up and get those crazy little things happening with my liquid clear and paint thinner. At least not yet. Not yet. All right. Let's get some dark color going now. I'm going to take a nice big serving of mountain mixture and I'll add some Van Dyke brown, maybe a little crimson, a little sap green. Just mix up a super dark color. It's a very dark green. It will probably look black on your palette, and if it does, that's good. Just nice and dark. Nice and dark. And then we'll take our 2-inch brush, and I'm just going to tap the top corner of the 2-inch brush into that quantity of paint. Just rocking it forward, and if I show you the end of the brush here, maybe you can see. If I put it in front of the canvas, you can. Maybe you can see how I've just loaded that top corner, and that's all I'm looking for there. All right, let's go back up here. Now we can begin to add closer little shrubs and bushes and tiny little trees and stuff that's growing in front of that distant little pine thicket. There we go. I'm reloading frequently. I'm going back to the palette quite often to pick up a little more paint. Like I said earlier, I'm interested in a little waterfall that lives in here, so I'm gonna try to leave a little gap right there. See what we can come up with. There we go. I'll find a little 1-inch brush now. Make sure he's nice and dry. And I'm just going to pounce or tap the top corner of that brush into some cad yellow. Be right back. I'm going to pick up a little sap green. Just load that brush nice and full on that top corner, just like so. Let's come back up and we'll highlight. Yeah, little light's peeking through there, and it just touches and dances across the top of these little bushes and shrubs, these little shrubberies. Very soft light, and you can vary this color as you go. I'm picking up a little yellow ochre. Just add whatever you want to in there. Try it. Have fun with your colors. See what happens. Lots of paint though, and a nice light touch. If there is a secret, that's the secret to nice little highlights, sparkly little highlights on your foliage. There we go. Just some quiet little stuff that lives back there. All right, fan brush time. It's fan brush time. Let's clean off my palette a little. Let's take just a little drop of liquid clear, and I'm going to pick up some titanium white. Maybe just a little touch of phthalo green and phthalo blue in there with. There we go. Just want to soften that paint ever so slightly with my liquid clear so it will flow and slide over that very easily. All right, let's come up and find maybe our little waterfalls kind of slipping down through here, and it comes over and it just falls off like that. Comes over, falls down. Straight over, straight down, just like that. All right. Down below, it's going to fall into some sort of a pool down here. So let's do a little planning. Let's take some of that good old dark color I had going on my bushes. We'll load it into a 2-inch brush, and I want to begin to get a feel for the lay of the land right here. Just going to tap a little dark color in there, tap a little dark color on this side, have it kind of reach down for this little pool here. Before I get too far along, I want to take maybe a clean 1-inch brush. Get this fan brush out of the way. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you, fan brush. Hang tight. Here's a little phthalo green and phthalo blue. I'm just mixing those together on my 1-inch brush. And I want to find, some nice watery color that's going to live right in here. So I'll pull that straight down, and I can still see some of that nifty stuff I did with my sea sponge, paper towel, whichever you decide to use. I think I use sea sponge on this one, but both work. And we might even have, there may be another waterfall that lives down here later. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and put a little dark in there in case we decide we want to do that. Just sort of envision this thing running right on down and out of the painting. We'll deal with that more when we come to it. All right, now back to the fan brush. Back to the old fan brush. Let's have a little splash right here at the base of the waterfall. I want to begin to think about this kind of gathering in this little pool out here. And as you work, you'll pick up just a little touch of that color, and that's nice. That's kind of nice. Just resist the temptation to cover all this nice stuff that's in the background, all that gesso work you did. You don't want to just smother it over. All right. Feel the need to contain my little waterfall here just a bit, so let's grab a palette knife. Let me clean up my dark color, my dark foliage color, move it out of the way. We'll come back and use some more of that later. All right. Let's take a little white and a little dark sienna, maybe just a little touch of Van Dyke brown, mix those together. And I'm going to add to that mixture some liquid white. I want this to be a little softer than normal. There we go. Go back to the filbert brush. I'm going to load this full of Van Dyke brown on both sides. And then we'll pull one side through that light color. So I've got my dark on one side, my light on the other side, and I'm going to come up here and keep that light turned toward the top. Just kind of block this in with a couple little stones. Little stones live right there at the edge of the creek. Just as stones do. That one kind of hangs way out and over. That way it feels like our little waterfall's in behind something. It's not gonna rush away. Maybe a couple more live out here by the edge of the creek. I need to think about a little highlight too on this grass. That would definitely get some sunlight right there. So let's take that 2-inch brush. This is the same dirty 2-inch brush I was using. I'm just going to go right into my yellow, tap it full of some of that color. It makes a nice highlight color, little pre-made highlight color. We'll let this slip down to the rocks and maybe just overlap the rocks a little. Just work its way right on out. A little bit on this side too. Always thinking about the lay of the land, how that land sits in there, the angles. Trying not to cover up all of my dark. I did manage to plow over a rock or two, though. I'm going to go back and kind of sharpen those guys up. It happens. Happens when you're building land. There we go. Clean them up. I've got another clean, dry 1-inch brush handy here. This is where things get a little mysterious and wacky. I'm just going to take the edge of the, watch this. There's no paint on this brush. I'm just going to take this paint, kind of stretch it out here on the edges. Let it dissolve into that liquid clear. What's happening? Fun, that's what's happening. We're just kind of going crazy here. Don't exactly know where that's going, don't exactly care. There we go. We're just going to let it vignette away. See what we wind up with. All right. How about some big trees now? I've got my dark color all mixed up and ready to go. Let me wash that fan brush. Get all that old lavender color out of it. Don't want any white with this. This is just good dark color. I'm even going to fortify it just a bit with some more mountain mix. I want this very, very dark. If you get white in your dark foliage color, it will start to look sort of chalky. It's funny looking. You don't want funny looking foliage, it'd be terrible. All right, let's come up and let's build some big, big trees. Yeah, got a big one, lives right there. Again, I'm just gonna turn that brush over on the side, use the corner first. And he'll get bigger and bigger and bigger the further I work down. He'll kind of reach out and overlap these little background trees, push them further into the distance, and that's always nice. He's even going to overlap those little bushes. Come right down here and sit on the hill. Something like that. And he's got to have a friend. Wouldn't be right if he didn't. You wouldn't want to sit out on this pretty hill with that pretty view and not have somebody to share it with. There we go. He's got a buddy now. Probably needs a neighbor, huh? I'll give him a neighbor across the way. Where does his neighbor live? Be a good spot right there. That's a good little hole. Let's put a tree in there. Needed something right there. You might wipe out a tree or two in the background when you do this. I always wind up covering up one that I really like, but you know, it's the way it happens sometimes. It's all right. As Bob says, we know he lives back there. We were acquainted once. He was a nice tree. He went his way, I went mine. Maybe we'll meet again someday. All right. Let's grab a clean fan brush. Pick up a little cad yellow, maybe a little sap green. Little touch of the liquid white. I'll put just a little highlight on these. These are close enough that we would begin to see a little bit of highlight living out here on these branches. Just want to take great care to preserve some of that dark. I don't want to cover all that dark up. If you have any trouble making that paint stick, Add a little more liquid white to it. There we go. I don't want those to get too bright, but I do want to see some of those branches that are projecting out towards you. If you leave it dark, it's hard to see the branches that are projecting this way, out toward us. We can see the left branches and the right branches, but we can't see those in the middle. Highlights help take care of that. You can even sparkle up a few and make them just a touch brighter right through the middle. Sometimes that's nice. Maybe we add a little white, a little more titanium white to that. Make some exceptionally bright highlights right through the center. Really makes that thing round out nicely. Maybe just a couple on this one too. There we go. I've got my little 1-inch brush going that had that bush color. Let's load it just a little differently here. Let's pull it through the paint in one direction. This is just cad yellow. Maybe we'll do a little Indian yellow, a little bit of sap green, a little touch of liquid white. I want to make sure this is soft enough to stick without having to push very hard. Let's put a couple little bushes down here at the base of this tree. Just kind of help plant them into the hillside. You can even turn your brush sideways if you want to. You can have some smaller little things growing. It's kind of cute. Everybody needs a cute bush. Lives right there. A little bit right there. What a darling little shrubbery. All right. Let's come on down here and do something with all this. We've got a whole bottom of the painting and what to do with it. How about, let's find a 2-inch brush. This one's clean. Let's go back into some more of that good dark color. Tap, 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 tap it full of dark color, and let's decide where. Maybe. There's some ground coming over, and it just sort of falls right on down. I just kind of tap the brush and I start to turn, and just let it fall. Let's come over on the other side. We'll do a little bit of the same. Maybe this comes down and it kind of cuts that little pool off, pushes it back so it doesn't get away. And we get a feeling of some of this stuff just kind of coming on down. We'll think about this area. For a minute. In the meantime, let's build this little waterfall that's coming on over here. Clean up all that green and get it out of my white paint. I want nice clean white paint here. I'm going to go back to my little fan brush that had the light blue green mixture. I think that was phthalo blue and phthalo green. I had just a little touch of liquid clear in there with it. Yeah, there we go. Phthalo blue, phthalo green, little white. I'm going to clean up around the base of these rocks just a bit. A little over here. This is a big waterfall. Maybe we should use a big fan brush for this. Let's load up a big fan brush. Little touch of blue, little touch of green, a lot of white. Little drop of liquid clear. When I say a little drop of liquid clear, I'm just touching the corner of that fan brush into the liquid clear, and that's all. Don't need very much. All right, so we're going to paint the big waterfall the same way we painted the little waterfall. We're just going to come over, pull the plug out of it. Just let it fall straight down. Let's do it again. This stroke will overlap that stroke. We'll come over and down. One more. There we go. I'll take this back edge and just kind of soften it into the background back there. No, it feels like all that water's coming from somewhere. It has to come from somewhere. Flows right on out of that pool and then right on over. All right. I'm going to wash that fan brush while I'm at it. I think I'm done with that light color, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that one up. And I'll sort of shake it out. I'm going to leave a little thinner in there for just a second. Watch what we do here. Let's go ahead and start. Let's start having some fun with liquid clear and paint thinner. We'll see what we can make this do. This is my little clean 1-inch brush. I'm just going to kind of tickle the edges of some of this stuff, some of this grass where it's just stopping, where it's suddenly stopping. A little bit over here too. Soft little edges. They just sort of extend out and over that background, and we really don't know where they stop. Sometimes you can even borrow a little dark and bring it down further if you want to. There we go. All right, now let's have a little fun. Let me set my palette down. I'm going to grab my palette knife and watch right up here. Watch what happens if I just take a little bit of that paint thinner that's still in the brush and I just sort of flick it against my knife. We can even do a little bit of that up here. Can you see all this wild stuff happening? Isn't that crazy? Like I said, it's kind of a nightmare if you don't mean for it to happen, but if you do, oh boy, it's fun to do this. And I just kind of like to go all around the edges and just let some of this crazy pebbling effect take place. I'm not sure what you call it. It just sort of, that thinner just hits the clear and it kind of blooms and it makes all sorts of wild things happen. So we'll do some more of that later. I just wanted to get it started. I couldn't wait. Couldn't wait to have fun. All right, we need to do something with this. We've got a big old gap there and we need to fill it with something. So let's take some Van Dyke Brown. We kind of hid this one with rocks, so I'm going to do the same thing here, but we need bigger rocks. We need some knife-made rocks that kind of come out and cut that thing off. This is a pretty sudden drop right here, so you would think there'd be some exposed land right there. This has all been worn away by all that water coming over here, rushing over for years and years and years and years and years. It's just sort of eroded this little patch of land right here. Let's put a little bit on the other side, same way. Maybe it kind of comes over and down, and maybe it reaches right out to the edge. Just rubbing a little dark brown in there first. Let's take a little bit of that brown. Wipe my knife, pardon me. Let's take a little bit of that brown and some white and a little dark sienna and mix it together to a very, very marbled appearance. I'm not going to overmix that by any means. And we'll cut off a little roll of that paint on the knife. And let's add some highlights to the top of these little rocks here. Just graze it very gently. And this will help kind of determine where's the top of the rock and where's the side of the rock, and where are the shadows, and where are the highlights. We need some of that going on in here. A little bit on this side too. Just barely graze. There it comes. Okay. I'm going to get rid of that thin rock color. I think I'm done with that. I'm going to make a little more of a lavender flavored color here. I'm going to use some white and some mountain mixture. This is our pre-tubed mountain mixture. It's mountain mixture, as you know, is just a combination of blue and black and brown and alizarin crimson normally, under most circumstances. One of the instructors years ago said, gee, we use that all the time. Why don't we just put it in a tube? So they did. I'm very happy about that. Makes life easier. We'll take a little bit of that sort of gray lavender color and just have some shadows here on the front of the rocks. They're going to go down this way. So it really feels like that's just sort of a straight down, real steep drop. Just a little touch of this here and there. Don't want to get too crazy with it. Let's keep our wits about us. If a little looks good, doesn't mean a lot will look better. But I'm still just barely grazing. Just barely grazing. I've got a 2-inch brush cooking here. It's got some of that dark green in it. And I'm going to go back to that. And now I'm going to kind of cut the bottom of that rock off. How do I, maybe, I'll tell you what. How about if we just have some stuff that kind of grows this way? Yeah, just kind of hang, maybe that's like ivy and vines and who knows what. There's always stuff like that growing off a little rock cliff, though, it seems like. Maybe some of our grass just extends on down here. Maybe there's another rock. Maybe there's another rock. See, you start to see things. You start to see things as you paint. Maybe there's another rock right there, or at least a little exposed soil. I don't know. It can be a rock, it can be soil. Got a little touch of my light color in there, but I kind of like it. Like there's a little drop off right there. There we go. Let's go back to that highlight color. It will need a little highlight too, even though I got some in there. It needs some more. Comes right down like that. There we go. There we go. Get a little bit of that lavender color on our small side of the knife and put a little bit of shadow in there. Just a touch here and there. Got a little too much there. There we go. Maybe even a little more of that real dark base color. Yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want. If it ever gets too bright, you can always go back to your dark base color. Kind of knock it down a little bit. All right. Now, I can keep going. I'll cut that little rock off, and I want this little wedge of land to just come on down and kind of hang out right here. I think I want a little more on this side. Now I need to cut those rocks off right at the back. Have a little, maybe we have a little growth right there. Little vines and weeds and all kinds of pretty stuff. Get a little more of that dark. certainly this stuff would be reaching out and trying to get some of the moisture from that waterfall. Might even kind of blow it back in that direction. I don't know. All right. Pick up my little clean 1-inch brush again, and we're going to start to soften some of these edges. Let them just sort of melt and disappear. A little bit over here too. It's fun to imagine this scene just continues on somewhere and we don't know where it goes. That's half the fun of a painting like this. Sometimes it's fun to just start breaking rules and paint whatever you want to paint. You might like it, might even make you feel good to do it. So do it. All right. Got my 2-inch brush here that has some light color cooking. Let's go back to that. I'm going to pick up a little blue, cool down my green just a bit. A little phthalo blue in there with that, and I'll push up a little ridge of paint. Let's come up here and start highlighting some of this grass. I'll let it walk down and just kind of consume the back edge of those rocks so it hides those rocks. Hides them down into the ground. They don't feel like they're stuck on top anymore. They feel like they're sitting down in the ground. That's what I'm looking for. See, that'll just kind of drift right over. Maybe there's a little bit of highlight on some of this stuff that's hanging out over the cliff here. The important thing is just not to cover up all the dark. That way it feels like there's still some dimension in there. This is about as abstract a painting as you'll ever see me try to paint. Like I said, it's fun to get the old imagination working. Got to keep it exercised. Let's cut off this edge just a little bit. There we go. I love painting scenes like this because I can just sort of hear in my mind the sound of that rushing water, and it really kind of puts me in a good place. Makes me think of summertime. Hanging out, having fun, being out in nature. I'm just varying my yellows a little bit here as I go, if I want a little brighter touch here and there. And even those strokes, I'm going to come back and soften with my little clean 1-inch brush. Again, I'm just trying to let this sort of melt away on the edges. Periodically, you may have to kind of wipe that brush off because you'll pick up some paint from your canvas as you work. And that's fine. Just remember to do it once in a while. You might carry paint out into your little vignette effect that you don't mean to. There we go. Wherever it goes, we don't know. Let's plant a few little bushes out here, maybe. We need a little shrubbery or two. Going back to my 1-inch brush that has all that nice light color in it. And I'm loading it to a rounded corner, and I'll just come up here and pop a little color in there. Maybe there's a little ochre in this one. Little touch of the liquid white with it. Want to make sure this sticks really well, so I don't have to hit and try to get it to stick. you get that paint soft enough, it will just pop right off your brush without you having to really worry about it. There we go. You can just add these wherever you want to. You might want more than I'm planting, or you might want fewer, or you might not want any at all. That's up to you. I think they kind of help with the feeling that there's some depth back there, and it just sort of carries on back into the distance. And there's a lot of little hills and dales and valleys and ditches and all that stuff. There normally is around a little creek and a waterfall like this. Maybe, I tell you what, let's add a little, we haven't hit bright red yet, we need to do that. We need a little firecracker piece in here. So this is some yellow ochre and bright red, yeah. Maybe that's some kind of flowering plant of some sort. And there's another one right there. We might as well just go color crazy. So we've got all this other crazy stuff in this painting. Remembering to wipe off once in a while, just kind of wipe some of that excess color off your brush. All right. Let's go back to that little fan brush and we'll have some more fun. Let me put my palette down here for just a second. Dipping that brush in a little touch of paint thinner, just a little at first until you see what it's doing. I even go over here on a paper towel and I just kind of pat it off so I don't have too much. Now let's come up to the canvas and we'll flip a little more up here and get some of this wild effect. I think this is going to be really neat where the ground just kind of disappears. We can get some on the waterfall and it might start to feel like a splash, and there's lots of bubbles and stuff going on down there. Even with this, you can kind of go crazy and put a bunch or just put a little here and there so it's real subtle. I tend to go crazy because I think it's really, really neat. It's nice for a little fantasy landscape. I would suggest, if you're going to try this one, once you've completed your painting, pull it off the easel right away and lay it flat, because this stuff can drip and run over time. It's better to just get it laid flat as quickly as you can so your painting doesn't run off in the floor. That'd be awful. I'm going to go back to a little script liner brush. And I feel like if some of this stuff is sort of eroded away, we'd very, very, very likely see a few little roots sticking out of there. We'll put some little vinies and little roots and things that are just kind of dangling over the edge. This is Van Dyke Brown, a little touch of sap green, and lots of paint thinner to soften it up. I'm just turning that brush to a fine point. We could even come down here and just kind of have a few little roots and vines, and just using the tip of the brush, that sort of helps put some linear stuff in here. Maybe there's a little bit kind of hanging off the edge of that. Yeah. Stuff's trying to grow out of the edge of that little cliff. Just gives it a little extra shot of detail. A couple little things hanging out there. Just some little skinny things dripping over the edge. We also take our palette knife, just scratch in a little stick and a twig here and there. Some of these bushes might help hide some of our Some of our little edges here and there that we didn't intend to still have showing. Seals everything, brings it together, sort of plants the rocks down in the ground if you overlap them just a little bit. Some of these may show, some of them may not, but it only takes a second to scratch them in there, so what's the harm? All right. Well, I'd say that painting can have a little signature on it. I've got some, actually, let's sign it in bright red. Why not? Let's sign it in bright red so it shows up real loud and clear. A little paint thinner on the liner brush. I like to sign it in red as a little thank you to Bob. Tell you what, painting has absolutely changed my life for the better. And I've been painting for a little over 25 years now. And it's made me so aware of nature and all the beauty around us. And I'm so happy that Bob shared his joy of painting. And it's my pleasure to share my joy of painting with you. So I hope you enjoyed this little scene. I hope you try it. Thanks for joining me today, and happy painting.